Yes.
Opening slide. Okay,
Yep, I see it. Okay.
got it.
Well, welcome everyone to our August Caregiver Solutions event. My name is Dana Cameron. I am a social worker here at Vantage, and we are very excited to have the Alzheimer's Association with us today. Our speaker for today is Lexi Ritt. Lexi is a social worker at the Cleveland chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. She manages caregiver support groups and early stage programming. Lexi is passionate about community mental health and bringing needed services to all neighborhoods for all people. Welcome, Lexi.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and I appreciate you,
Welcome.
Dana, having us. You know, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I know it's a couple minutes late, so I apologize. And today we're going to be discussing effective communication strategies, and I'm just going to go ahead and dive in. There should be time for questions at the end, but if anyone does have anything pressing, please feel free to type it in the chat or, just chime in. I'm happy to take questions as we go. So just kind of some objectives of our program today. For effective communications, we're really trying to explain communication changes that take place throughout the course of Alzheimer's or another dementia, whether that's verbal or nonverbal communication. Identify strategies to connect and communicate at each stage of the disease. So we really do believe that, in the beginning stages all the way through the late stages of dementia, people are able to communicate, and there's ways in which even when there's no verbal communication, that you can still connect and communicate with your loved ones. So just kind of looking at this word blurb of what is communication to just kind of get us started, right? Of course, communication can be back and forth dialogue. It could, like you see some of these, words, conversation, talking, but then also, body language, facial expressions. So some of those, like, again, nonverbal ways to communicate. And then, of course, listening there. So talking and listening. And just to kind of get us, situated in what is communication before we begin. So communication, just an overview of the changes throughout the disease. So in the early stage of diagnosis, individuals are able to convey thoughts and feelings through language, maybe in ways that they've always been able to express themselves, able to make decisions about future care. So if someone's in the earlier stages of disease, determining who would be their POA, or would they, verbalizing, would they like to remain in their home as long as they can? Would they like to move and to be placed? Able to engage in those conversations about their future care. But you may have some misinterpretation of what others say. Maybe that's like sarcasm is a little bit harder to detect and to understand. Could be just misinterpreting maybe somebody's tone as well too, or their body language. And then as we're moving through to the middle stage, you may see your loved one using kind of the same words again and again, just phrases that they're familiar with, relying more on tone of voice, facial expression, and body language, because maybe it's getting a little bit harder to have that back and forth dialogue to follow along in conversation. And but they still, there is still an absolute need to have emotional connection and meaningful activity at this stage. But you can see people kind of really start to withdraw because they might really be having a challenge, again, following a conversation or engaging in conversation. And then moving through to the late stage, somebody may still respond to familiar words, phrases, or songs. Like, music is so powerful for anyone. And then especially those that, are experiencing cognitive decline. And in the late stage, it can be really, really powerful to connect through music, listening to music with someone. Again, maybe that is challenging how we think about communication in our daily life, or how we have communicated with our loved one. So just, managing our expectations at this point, what communication looks like, is really important. Very difficult, but is important. And again, in the later stages, using body language and the five senses to connect, which using the five senses we'll dive into a little bit deeper. But again, this is just very high overview. It looks different for everybody. You could be in the later stage or in the middle stage and, still really be able to converse. It could just look different for everyone. So again, beginning at the early stage, some changes you might notice: difficulty finding the right word, maybe needing more time to respond to a question, or again, just engaging in conversation. You may see people withdrawing a bit more socially because they're having that challenge. They can feel embarrassed. They don't want to engage with their friends anymore just because they're having this challenge, and then struggling with decision making or problem solving. And this is when I think we should have video, but I don't know that we're going to be able to. So I really apologize there. I can see if I'm able to try and link them later, but I'm not sure that we have that capability. So again, I apologize.
It's okay.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much. You're making me feel better.
Good.
So again, ways that we can try and connect in the early stage of diagnosis: asking directly how to help with communication. So again, we were talking about in the early stages, individuals are able to be a part of the conversation related to their future care, and that includes their needs now. So it might be, I was working with a couple. She was experiencing memory loss, and he was her care partner. And he asked me, he said, I don't know if I should fill in the word when I can tell she's struggling to locate the word or a name that she's trying to recall. What should I do? But he was looking for this textbook answer. And I just looked at the wife, who was experiencing memory loss. And I said, what would you like? And she looked right at him. She said, I want you to tell me because I'm getting frustrated. So she was able to engage in that conversation and advocate for her own needs. So ask directly how to help with communication, what would be beneficial to your loved one. Keeping sentences clear and straightforward, leaving lots of time for conversations, and location as well too. If you need to have a conversation that's going to be a little bit heavier, or you just want to sit and chat with somebody, when are they at their best? When are they most balanced? When's a good time? What's a good location? And leaving time for that as well. And then including the person in conversation, again, that might affect him or her, like future care planning. And again, if there's any questions or comments, please feel free. This could be as interactive as you all would like, or I'm happy to just keep going through. And things to remember: avoid making assumptions. Again, speaking directly to the person, communicating what feels most comfortable for them. So maybe that is, on the phone, that's in person, maybe it's writing things down beforehand, maybe that's helpful. Laughing together, I think, is so important. There's going to be miscommunications, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be frustration. So, if you could just address them and laugh together, it can relieve some of the tension. Again, this can be easier said than done, right? There's a lot going on, and I don't want to minimize anyone's experience. And being honest and staying connected with each other. So I think if both people have that as a goal, it can be helpful to be rooted in this work, because again, it can be challenging. And then moving through to communicating in the middle stages, again, kind of the same format through each of the stages. So starting with some changes that you might be noticing. Increased difficulty finding the right words. Again, using a lot of the same phrasing or words repeatedly, just kind of drawing back from these maybe topics or again, phrases that they feel comfortable with. Inventing new words to describe familiar things. An example could be if somebody was talking about a watch, they might say hand clock. Another one I've heard was they were trying to talk about a volcano, but they said fire mountain. So kind of just describing what things are in a literal sense when not able to recall the word that they're searching for. Easily losing train of thought. So again, increased challenge in following conversation, maybe speaking less frequently. Again, we've been talking about seeing an increase in maybe withdrawing from activities once loved, or hanging out with family and friends and engaging in conversation, and communicating through behavior rather than words more often. And then, of course, we just want to highlight, if you're noticing major sudden changes, to consult a doctor, because you always want to rule out things like stroke or infection or maybe medicine's interacting badly and needing to seek medical attention. So if you're like, this doesn't seem right, I can't explain why this sudden change is happening, always, consulting with a doctor. Again, I think this is where we would have had a video, so just going to keep moving through. And then thinking about ways that we could connect in the middle stage, and approaching the person gently. So in approaching from the front, saying who you are, calling out their name, and it could be helpful to orient yourself like relationship wise to that person. So let's say I was, entering into, just using myself as an example, entering my grandma's home, I might say, "Hi, Grammy, it's Lexi, your favorite granddaughter," just to kind of place myself to her, and that could be helpful. Maintaining eye contact, so making sure you're getting to eye level. So if somebody's seated, sitting next to them, making sure, that they're able to see you and hear you more clearly. Avoiding criticizing, correcting, or arguing. This is kind of where you would start to talk about, entering into someone's reality. And, what we would call therapeutic fibbing, which is really like a clinical term for telling white lies, and not correcting somebody, because now you're kind of getting into the place where the connection, the communicating is more important than the actual conversation and what's being discussed, if that makes sense. And paying attention to your tone, again, easier said than done, right? Like it's some days will be better than others, watching the tone and how things are going, and that's totally understandable and valid. Caregiving is a 24/7 job, but just trying to watch your tone and just make sure that it's even. If you're feeling frustrated, take a break. You are allowed to do that and try again later, and taking your time too. So again, if you want to try and have a conversation with someone, whether it's specific or just to spend time, making sure that you maybe block some time out, that you could sit down and, again, easier said than done, but not be like, okay, in 15 minutes, I have to do this, and have, just your list of things that you have to do through that day. And again, thinking through how we can connect in the middle stage of disease is assessing the person's needs. So I think this kind of goes back to, what is a good time in which to try and communicate with your loved one? Are they hungry? Did they just wake up? Maybe they're thirsty. Are they cold? So really kind of going through, if you're familiar with the hierarchy of needs, meeting somebody's physical needs and then being able to connect after that. And really using, again, kind of going to tone and different, communication strategies, really using that validating language, letting your loved one know that you hear their thoughts or concerns, whether, they're communicating through behavior, words, or both. Lots of I statements, lots of validation. I understand, that could be frustrating. I understand that you feel upset. Keeping answers shorter and responding to the emotions behind the statement. Again, just trying to meet that person where they are and just validate your loved one and how they're feeling. I'm not sure, this might be on a slide later, so I might be repeating myself in a bit here, but another thing is we have these, they're like the size of a business card. We call them My Companion cards, and they can be very discreetly slipped to like a hostess, a server, or, somebody behind, a front desk attendant, that they just say My Companion has memory loss, and it has some ways in which to communicate with that person. People find those really, really helpful. And one thing on there that, again, I'm not sure if it's highlighted in this presentation, is that when you ask a question, you want to repeat it in the same exact order of words. So if you ask someone, would you like a ham or turkey sandwich today? If you're, wait, again, giving like lots of response time to process and then to answer. If you wanted to repeat it though, you would want to use that same structure of sentence. Would you like a ham or turkey sandwich today? Because if you even switch the wording a little bit, it's believed that that individual may then think you asked them a different question. So they'll begin to process again. Again, I think too, at this stage, really keeping options, like using options, I think, instead of what would you like for lunch, using those options. Would you like this? Would you like that? So still offering that agency, but limiting the choice. Again, so to think through how to connect in this middle stage with our loved ones experiencing cognitive decline, using short sentences, basic words, maybe using the words that they use, using their language back to them, speaking slowly and clearly, one person at a time, limiting distractions. So like not having the TV on, maybe turning the music down if you're listening to music. Again, sitting at the same height, looking towards each other, just being patient, offering a guess or fill-in word if acceptable. So again, I think they use if acceptable because they've assumed that this care team has had those conversations in the early stage, so they would know to fill in or to not. And again, I think it's important to highlight just choice, so limiting, using choice, and then repeating sentences in the same way that you worded them originally. Maybe this is when you begin to use visual cues and gestures. If someone is using, body language or they're gesturing more, it might be effective for you to use that as well. Avoiding sudden movement, maybe writing things down, putting answers into your questions, repeating yourself if needed, and avoid quizzing, right? So we always want to highlight that, quizzing someone is not going to help their cognitive integrity. It will just make them feel embarrassed or frustrated if they don't know the answer. So avoiding quizzing, turning negatives into positives. And any thoughts on this? Like I also don't want to be like the expert in the room. I know there are people who have tons of professional experience and personal experience caregiving too. So if anyone wants to share anything that's been effective for them or is currently working, like feel free, please chime in. Or again, if not, you can always connect with me afterwards as well too.
I was going to say I'm a huge
Yeah.
fan of verbal, like writing things down for someone,
Yeah.
because even I've visited some clients where their loved ones will write something down on a whiteboard for them, like the plan for today, like you have a doctor's appointment or your daughter's coming to see you, and just those little things can give someone a little more sense of control, that they know what's going on that day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think too, other examples where I've heard where it's been effective is I was just talking to a gentleman whose wife is experiencing cognitive decline, and she used to love to cook, but she's having difficulty following recipes like she was able to. And so having, or she didn't use a recipe, so they've been just writing all the steps down because it was maybe something she made all the time, but she's having trouble remembering the order. So then she just has it there. So again, Dana, you're so right. She still has that agency where she's able to prepare something, but she has that reference where she can just look back of like step one, and then you can even use it on like a whiteboard so you can cross it off if you've done it. So I think writing things down is really beneficial, and people seem to have success with it. And again, I know we kind of highlighted some of these things, but joining that person's reality. An example I just heard the other day, someone was saying their mom was who has dementia, she was rushing around in the morning, and she said, I have to go to work. She's been long retired, hasn't worked in a long time. And was just like, I kind of getting frantic. And they're like, oh my gosh, I know I'm going to drive you, but first we have to sit and we have to eat breakfast and then we're going to go. Right. It wasn't, you don't work anymore. It was entering into that person's reality. And then they sat down and they ate breakfast together. So it wasn't about, and then they talked about work. What was she going to do at work? So just entered into her reality. Again, it's a clinical term we would use, therapeutic fibbing. And again, it wasn't about the conversation as much as that they were connecting over breakfast. Provide reassurance that you hear and understand, again, using that validating language with I statements. I hear you, I understand, I could understand that you are upset, validating, focusing on the feelings, not the facts. And then redirecting the person if necessary. So redirecting would be the clinical term for distraction. So, if there's an activity that brings somebody some peace, some joy, whether it's reading the paper, listening to music, you might say like, I understand. Why don't you come in the kitchen with me and we can sit and we can do a puzzle? then using that inviting language and redirecting them to an activity that they find calming. And then communication in the late stage, changes that you may notice. Communication might be reduced to a few words or sounds, possible responses to some familiar words or phrases, and to connect, listening for expressions of pain and responding promptly, just helping that person feel safe and happy, continuing to bring respect to each conversation. And there is encouragement to keep talking to your loved one. And then using all 5 senses to communicate. And we're going to dive in there. But yeah, I just want to, reiterate that, we do believe, I believe, and the association believes that everyone is able to communicate and needs to communicate and connect through all stages of the disease. And this video, it's actually, I find it very powerful, and I really wish I could share it. So I'm going to take just some time to tell you what we would have been watching. And it's a woman who, her mom is in the late stages of dementia and is no longer able to communicate verbally. And her mom is living in a long-term care community, and she shares an experience of going to visit her mom and brushing her mom's hair, and her mom would smile. So, they weren't able to speak how they could, but they were still able to feel connected. So that's what she shares in that video. So again, thinking through our 5 senses, connecting through touch, and these could be feeling different types of fabrics, maybe painting somebody's nails, putting lotion on their hands, visiting with animals. So if, somebody likes animals, and it doesn't have to be a living animal, it could be just something that's soft, using Play-Doh, just holding somebody's hand. So just using touch to connect. And then connecting through sight, looking at bright colored pictures, watching videos of maybe some, a topic or something that somebody's always enjoyed. Looking at photo albums, that can be a great activity. I think especially like a calming activity. I know caregivers have made, photos or like family trees for people, and they just love to flip through them and look at the pictures, or getting big coffee table books of, pictures of nature. If that person used to love nature, they still love nature. They're just connecting through that. Visiting an aquarium, so painting with watercolors, sitting by the open window together. So just kind of thinking through how can you connect through sight. And then connecting through sound, listening to familiar music. I think this is so powerful. There's more and more research coming out on the power of music. Listening to recordings of, again, nature, cities, animals, whatever would maybe bring that your loved one some joy and some comfort. Listening to songs or speech in the person's native language. You'll hear that care partners and caregivers will say, my loved one is now they're using their first language as opposed to English, usually is what I'm hearing. They're speaking in Spanish. So maybe listening to Spanish recordings. This is, I think, again, kind of going through sight and sound and using technology, especially if somebody has maybe grandkids or loved ones that don't live close, using videos, like having little videos they could watch again and again so they can hear and look at, their loved ones. And again, reading books, poetry, maybe scripture, newspaper articles to your loved one, and, using a gentle tone and just while you're speaking to them. And then connecting through smell. So whether that's herbs or spices, essential oils, tea, and again, maybe using a fragrance that person would enjoy and rubbing it on their hands. Maybe it's something that they used to cook all the time, or a meal that brings them joy, cooking that together and letting them be there and have that aroma, and connecting through smell. So again, connecting through taste, whether it's favorite foods, home-baked goodies, flavored drinks, whatever, anything connecting through taste. I think just, and again, sitting together and sharing a meal, even if your loved one is, maybe they don't eat in the way that they used to, but that's okay. Again, just it's about the journey, not the destination, not to be so cheesy, but I do believe that. And again, communicating in all stages of the disease, really joining that person's reality to connect. It is their reality, it is real to them. So if you do want to be able to have connection, you need to be in their world. And I think this is a big one. And again, I guess theme of this education program is easier said than done, but understanding and accepting what you can and cannot change. And there are going to be days where this is easier than others, and there's going to be days where this just feels impossible. So being giving yourself grace, recognizing when you need a break and when you need to, and that is okay, and allowing yourself to do that and taking that respite. Remembering the person retains a sense of self despite the losses throughout this disease. So people need to connect, they need to communicate, and they're able to do so. Demonstrating respect and connecting through feelings. And again, just recognizing that this person, your person, is still a person. They're still your person, and there are ways to connect with them still. Trying to understand the source of reaction. So kind of using a little bit of an investigative mindset, could my loved one be hungry? Could they be tired? Could they be cold? Maybe there's a physical need behind the behavior that you're seeing, and trying to address that, and help meet the needs while soothing and calming that person. And I just want to pause there and see if there's any reactions or comments. I know it's a lot and kind of just moving through it quickly, but just wanted to take a beat if needed. All right.
What happens when alcohol use is involved in the person's dementia progression?
Oh, I see. I mean, yeah, definitely, we see that, whether alcohol consumption is the cause of somebody's cognitive decline, it also would not be helping anything if someone was experiencing memory loss. So we would, again, all these things easier said than done, would say that, somebody should limit or stop drinking if they're experiencing those changes. I know a lot of caregivers will just have NA beer in the house. Like maybe they can have an NA beer and NA wine, utilizing that, or that's a tricky situation. And
Yeah, I think
layered
so.
for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Again, it would depend, does this individual live by themselves? Like
By
where
themselves.
are they in? Yeah. Where are they in the disease? Like, do they still drive that they could go and purchase it themselves? It would depend on an individual situation as well too, but definitely, if it's possible, that end goal would be to get that person to stop drinking safely. Of course, there can be health consequences when somebody stops drinking cold turkey if they've been dependent on alcohol. So that would again be a conversation with their doctor. There are medicines now, and I don't know if it would be effective for somebody that's experiencing cognitive decline, that I know those that are trying to, that identifies alcoholics and want to stop drinking, they can take medicine that can help kind of curb some of those cravings. Or if you then drink alcohol, you would get sick. But again, I don't know if that'd be appropriate in this situation. So I think working with the medical team could be of benefit.
Yeah.
I would say the end goal would definitely be to have somebody not be drinking alcohol.
Right. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can agree on that. I think getting there would look different for each situation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the question. Anything else?
I loved that you mentioned decoding the communications and behaviors. I think a lot of times, unfortunately, in long-term care, behaviors get someone gets labeled as having behaviors, where so it might be something that's showing up like they're cold or hungry or they have a stomach ache and those sorts of things, and trying to figure out maybe what they're trying to communicate versus that it's just a negative behavior.
Yeah, no, I thank you for raising that up too. I think that's so important. And that's a big thing with wandering too, right? There's not like a true consensus on why somebody wanders. And again, it's probably individual to each person and probably individual, maybe even in that situation. So if somebody's wandered multiple times, the underlying reason could be different, but it is believed that it usually is like a physical need underlying it. So maybe that person is hungry, or they are understimulated or overstimulated, and they're just trying to calm down or trying to engage. So there's a reason behind a behavior for sure. And there is support available at the association, and this just kind of what this slide is highlighting. We have a 24/7 helpline. All of our services are free, so it's just here, 800-272-3900. Oh, let me go back. And that's, again, free. It's 24/7, 365 days a year, middle of the night, weekend, holiday. You need to be connected to a social worker, you can just by calling that number. We have bilingual staff. So if you call at any time, you can speak in Spanish, English, or you can use a translation service for over 200 languages. You can also do live chat if you don't feel like you're able to talk on the phone or don't feel comfortable to do so. You can use our chat service. And then we also have these education programs, as you are attending one now. There are others that are, a couple of them are very general population, so like 10 warning signs or healthy living for your brain and body. Anyone can get some good information there, but most of our programming, it really is focused on the caregiving community. So effective communication, dementia conversations that goes in depth into some of those topics, those really challenging conversations like driving, legal and financial planning, understanding and responding to behavior. So Dana, like you were highlighting, how can you help determine maybe what's going on and how can you respond? So we do have this education, again, free. We run them on virtually, in person, or we also have a training site where you can access these programs and watch all the programming asynchronously on your own time. We also have a community resource finder. We manage this in conjunction with AARP, and it's communityresourcefinder.org. And here you can locate community resources. So whether it's like adult day centers, in-home agencies that are servicing your area, support groups in your area, and you would filter by your zip code. And then of course you would select the service that you're looking for. And if you ever needed, you could connect with us at the local chapters or the 800 helpline. If you didn't feel comfortable or you didn't want to navigate this online platform alone, somebody could do it for your behalf. They could email you the results. They could print them out and mail you a hard copy of the results. So don't feel intimidated if you're like, I wouldn't want to navigate that by myself. You don't have to. And then we also have All's Connected. I heard a coworker one time describe this as like Facebook, kind of Facebook for those experiencing or caring for somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia. It's a free online community. Again, for anyone that is affected by this diagnosis. And there's like blogs, forums, and people respond. So it might be something to check out. Maybe if you didn't want to do a support group in person, this felt more comfortable for you, know that this is available. And this is also available for those that have a diagnosis themselves. And then we have an Alzheimer's Navigator, again, a free online tool that helps guide caregivers to create a personalized action plan, and then would link you to information, support, and local resources. We can also do this at the local level. If you felt like you wanted to connect with somebody one-to-one, we have clinical managers that can have those conversations with you, and you can discuss through specific challenges that you're facing. If you just have any questions about maybe resources that are available to you, we can connect you with one of our clinical managers. And again, that's also what they do at the helpline as well too. So you feel like didn't want to do this online, you could do this, over the phone or maybe even in person as well. And then again, we have time for questions. I know rather quickly because unfortunately the tech issue that we couldn't have any videos. But I'm here if anyone has questions or comments or just wants to connect. Even after this, I'll make sure that you can have my contact information. I'm going to put my direct line and my email in the chat.
Thank you for that. Anyone
Yeah,
have any
absolutely.
questions?
What other topics are you going to cover along this line? Or is this one and done?
For us today, our speaker is from the Alzheimer's Association. We do have future events coming up that are on different topics. Next month is regarding cancer resources.
Okay. Thank
But
you.
I know the you're welcome. But I know
Yeah.
the Alzheimer's Association has very many different trainings, as were mentioned.
Yeah, Joanne, we have, I always misquote the number, so I say 10 to 12 different education programs, and we run them in the community. So whether it's at a church, a YMCA, a senior center, or it's virtual, or we also have a training site where you can create a username and a password, and you can have access to all the programming there, and you could just watch them on your own time. You could return to them, sort of like shopping on Amazon, but everything's
Right.
free. Put in your cart, and then you can keep going back and watching them as needed. So, those 3 platforms are available. And if you needed, we could always connect and see what's going on in your area. But we
Okay.
have, just to highlight some of the different topics, we have a program on legal and financial planning. We have one on understanding and responding to dementia behaviors, difficult conversations. So that kind of goes in with like driving, home safety, some of those like really challenging topics. I'm trying to think what are effective communication, which you viewed today.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the ones that we're running all the time in the community.
Okay.
But
the problem is that I'm overseas, so I'm going to read about what you have and then try and find the translation, quote unquote, where I am, and hope that there's somebody who's doing the work in this country. So I'll have to keep up with you and then figure out where might be my resource overseas. Yeah.
No, definitely. We can connect afterwards to it, make sure that you get what
Okay.
you need.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Did you see I put my email and my number in the chat?
Okay, thanks.
No, thank you.
Lexi, I was wondering about explaining the difference. I've referred people to you all in the past, and sometimes people have said to me, well, but I don't know that they have Alzheimer's, it's dementia. And I've explained that you all address all of everything kind of under the dementia umbrella, so to speak, but how best do we explain that?
Yes, Dana, thank you. And I wish I had taken the time to do that in the beginning. As we were moving through, I had this internal dialogue of like, I just am interchangeably using both.
Oh, that's okay.
Yes. So I think you hit it exactly. It's the dementia is the umbrella term for the symptoms that you see, the changes in communication, changes in memory, changes in functioning, what the symptoms that someone experiences, we refer to as dementia. Alzheimer's is a disease that causes dementia. You could have vascular dementia, you could have dementia with Lewy bodies, you could have mixed dementia, which is where you're having more than one form of dementia. But dementia is that, again, umbrella term for the symptoms, the like cognitive decline, changes in functioning, changes in communication. In Alzheimer's Association, our services are for anyone experiencing memory changes, concerned about their memory, concerned about a loved one's memory. No formal diagnosis needed, doesn't need to be diagnosed Alzheimer's, does not need any dementia diagnosis. Just if you are experiencing those changes yourself, your loved one is experiencing those changes, we have services for you. So I don't want you to feel limited by the name. Dana, thank you for raising that up. It's a very important point. And it does come up where people are like, I'm not sure, if I can go to the support group. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful.
Yeah, of course. And I'll add too, we hear so much about Alzheimer's because it is the most common form of dementia. And it's like, I don't want to misquote, but I think it's like 60%. of cases of dementia are Alzheimer's. I'm hearing a lot about MCI, myocognitive impairment, and that is now, being used on the disease spectrum of Alzheimer's. So MCI kind of being that first stage, then going into the early stage of Alzheimer's. In the majority of cases of MCI, about 30% of people with MCI will just stay in that myocognitive impairment. And then the majority of the cases, they will move through the Alzheimer's spectrum.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. And again, if you have any
Welcome.
questions, feel free to reach out, or I'm sure Dana would be happy to put you in contact with us. And again, we have that 800 helpline, which I'm also going to put in the chat as well too. Oh, thanks, Joanne. It was nice to meet you virtually, and we'll connect.
Thanks a lot.
Feel free to give me a call.
Okay.
All right.
Do you do WhatsApp, Lexi?
Do we do WhatsApp?
Because I'm in a foreign country and it's 20 cents a minute if I
I
do,
see.
and it's $2 a minute if I do the
Yeah.
800.
I don't know that we WhatsApp, but we could definitely do like Zoom or something.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
we could do
Okay,
Zoom. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank
And-
you so much. Oh, sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I was gonna say an email, of course, too. We could email and then
course.
set
Of
up a time,
course,
Joanne, and we
yeah.
could do Zoom. Yeah. I just wanted to have that. No, thank you, Dana.
Well,
I really appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for speaking to our group, and thank you to everyone for attending. I know this was helpful for me as well. And you can never have too much information on this topic, so thank you so much.
Yeah.
And for next month, on Tuesday, September 12th at 2 p.m. on Zoom, we will have our next Caregiver Solutions event, and we will have speakers on resources for cancer, if you're experiencing it or caring for someone with cancer. So hope to see you all there, and thank you, everybody.
Thanks a million. Have a great
Oh,
day.
you're
Bye,
welcome.
everybody.
You
Have a good
too.
one.
Okay,
Thanks,
take
you
care.
too. Bye.
Bye-bye.